Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Entrepreneur Arts. Today we have a special guest, Troy Fischer. He's a multi-talented inventor, artist, and entrepreneur. Welcome, Troy. I wanted to just give you a chance to talk a little bit about your work before we get started here. And
Yeah,
just briefly describe a little bit about what you do there at your company, Fishco.
right. Well, in short, I'm a toy inventor. So I come up with toy concepts, mechanisms, things like that, and I pitch them to some of the major toy companies like Hasbro and Mattel. And I license ideas, and it's royalty-based income. It's kind of a risky business in that there's very little contract work involved. So it's kind of a crapshoot. You know, you're just kind of throwing ideas against the wall, brainstorming internally, and sharing these concepts with companies that are looking for outside innovation. Not all toy companies are very inventor friendly, but the few that I work with, you develop a relationship with them, and they want to see your stuff.
I guess it's a real niche market, the toy business and the inventor side of the toy business. And you've developed hundreds of products for Hasbro, Fisher Price, Spin Master, Jack
Yeah, over the
Pacific.
years. Over the
And
years, yeah,
you kind of have this
right.
inventor space back there, like a bunch of, I guess, mechanisms that you do research.
I build mechanisms for race cars. I do kind of light up effects, optical effects. I've done just wacky mechanisms like a Spider-Man with a magnet in his hand and he swings from web to web around this little miniature city. Mechanisms within action figures, like if you take a 5 or 6 inch action figure and you squeeze its legs. I did lots of squeeze leg stuff, squeeze leg punching action, squeeze leg, or something. And, jumping, flipping action figures, and also like wacky light up effects. All of those things, we do that stuff here. It's mostly in action figures, dolls, vehicles, and role play. I will show you. All right, so this is our impulse projection.
Oh,
All right, so this
see a
is,
little miniature face projecting on there.
yeah, so it's a talking face within an action figure. I did license this to Disney theme parks. So it's this technology where you have a talking face inside of an action figure. A few of the parks have it, but this attraction is only available at Magic Kingdom right now. So it's the Tron Light Cycle Run, and the experience to put your face inside of an action figure is called Tron Identity Program. So that opened up a couple of years ago, and you can go in there and you're all flush from getting off your Tron Light Cycle roller coaster, and you get in there into a kiosk and you can record yourself reciting some of the phrases, very Tron-esque phrases, Disney-sanctioned phrases. And they record your face talking, and they place it inside of an action figure.
So how does that technology work? How do you project a face onto a toy from the inside and
So
using?
I will show you what the guts of this thing looks like. All right, so in order to do an animation, what we've done is I do these printouts. Okay, these are done in Photoshop, and there's the different, visemes of people's expressions of speech. They call them visemes. And these match up with voice syncing. So basically it's a 7-frame animation. And
It's almost like a ViewMaster looking thing.
it looks like a ViewMaster, but what happens is this is a circuit board with LEDs on it. So that's for 5 frames. There's 5 LEDs there. So you're taking something like this, you're flashing 5 LEDs, either in sequence or just kind of randomly, and you have this 5-frame kind of, animated sequence. And you add lenses and prism, and you have, a way of selectively projecting these animation frames. And you can do it in any sequence that you want. You can time it to speech, or you could just do, a looping animation. So it looks like this. So we've put these into action figures. The best bang for the buck is to use it for talking action figures for speech. But you could also do like little, like tangible, like almost GIF files, like looping GIF files that you can wear. So this is the idea behind this. And the thing that differentiates this from like an LCD screen is that it's much higher resolution, and it's tiny, and you have control over the brightness, and you can project onto like irregular surfaces, like a vacuum formed face, like a concave or convex shape. So you have a lot of leeway with where you can stick these projectors because they're so small. So we've gotten this little projection system down to 3 by 3 millimeters. So this is the size of the projector that goes inside of this 7-inch action figure. So the projection it's inside of its chest like this, and inside of its helmet is a mirror which bounces it towards the face screen. But this is what it looks like in production. Okay, there we go. So this is the impulse projection infused Lightning McQueen, the real Lightning McQueen, as we used to call it.
Hey, I'm so happy to see you.
And you get a little bit of eye movement and stuff like that. And this is a remote control car, so when you move him left and right, like his eyes will go left or right.
Oh, wow.
He also does
fun.
a crash thing. I think they took the crash mechanism out. That's in the TV commercial. But yeah, so there's lots of applications for this.
But yeah, Disney's one of those innovation companies. They have these new robots now, autonomous robots, and they've always had really cool stuff like that. So I could see how your stuff would fit right in there.
Yeah.
So you have like a lot of toys there you've taken apart too, right? So it looks like you kind of have to reverse engineer things to invent new things.
That's right. That's right. So, a lot of that has to do with gearboxes and things like that. Those are things that are existing. Even like model kits, like Tamiya gearbox model kits, those have, set gear ratios, and you know exactly what you're getting. You get high torque or high speed. Just it saves time if you need to just prove something. It's much easier to actually build something and show something that's working, that's actually in action, so that someone gets it. Trying to describe a mechanism to somebody it doesn't work. Nobody gets it. There are very few people that I can have that kind of conversation with. There are a few people out there that I can do that with, but for the most part, you need to do something like, just even if it's a really down and dirty thing, and there's tape and there's some clay or something like that, just to show the motion of it is a huge help. So we call those little down and dirty studies breadboards. So I started out in a company called Toy Biz. It's a very old school. This was like 1993, I believe I started there in the toy industry. So I've been at this for over 30 years.
So what made you pursue a career at Toy Biz specifically and going after the toy industry?
When I was in art school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to come out the other end. But I knew how to build things. I knew a little bit about graphic design, not so great with sculpting and like the fine arts, drawing, sculpting, painting, not so much, but I'm better with like fabricating, things like that. So I aspired to be an industrial designer. I thought that was the coolest thing. Placement agencies at our art school, they had an industrial design job for me, which I took. And I really hated it. It wasn't that I didn't like industrial design or wasn't good at it. It was just not a good working atmosphere. It was kind of a toxic place. The boss was kind of a dick. So like in a rush, I took a freelance job also through the same agency. And it was in New York. I was like, great, I don't have to commute out of the city. They kind of hired me just because they needed people. They needed hands. It was kind of an up and coming toy company They had a Batman license at the time, and they had some kind of a small Marvel Comics license to do action figures. X-Men was a big thing at the time. So they needed people to they needed a toy wrangler is what they needed. So it was a freelance position, and it was, going to all the commercial shoots, photo shoots, and dealing with toy prototypes. So at the time that you're doing TV commercials, it's usually right before Toy Fair or a big event. The toys that you see in commercials and in photo shoots, those are not the actual production things off a production line. Those are prototypes. Those are what they call looks like, works like prototypes. So they're handmade. They're cast out of resin. They're hand painted, and they're extremely delicate. Like if you were to drop one, a working urethane action figure with like little springs and stuff inside of it that did punching action, that thing would just shatter. And you're done. You're going home unless you have like multiple samples of it, which is not always the case. So they needed somebody that could basically rebuild stuff that was broken and repaint things and all that kind of stuff. So that's, and in the meantime, I had a graphic design background in art school. So when I wasn't doing that, I was doing catalog layout and package design and things like that, and going to, photo shoots, and also, showroom displays. I was building showroom displays in the toy showrooms. So that's where it started out as a freelancer. I was just kind of a jack of all trades.
The toy industry, when it came to advertising, a lot of the toys back then, they would do a show, like a cartoon show just for the toy, right? Like Transformers or something like that. They would make a toy, but it would be a show about the toy.
When toy companies are asking me or trying to present me with a direction for what they need, they will often say, okay, this is really confidential. This is a TV show that we're working on, and it's got this, and this is the thing, and do you have a mechanism that does the thing? So yeah, that's become more and more common these days.
So what other changes have you seen over the years in the toy business side? Obviously, there's been a lot of merger acquisitions over the years, and not just your industry, but in many industries. So what sort of things have changed over the past 30 years or so that you've worked on toys?
Yeah, that's true. So the reason I'm on my own is because of a merger and acquisition between Marvel and Hasbro. When I got laid off from Toy Biz, that was at a time when Marvel Comics was just, they were becoming this big entertainment entity, which they are now. So they were like, why are we manufacturing toys? Because we were the toy arm of Marvel Comics. And they were like, well, this is just overhead, and, we're tired of this shit. So all the toy stuff went to Hasbro, and, we were already licensing other things like, pillows and toilet seats and stuff with Spider-Man on it to other companies. So they just became this licensing conglomerate. So yeah, there's conglomerates out there. We still have some of the larger toy companies, but one thing that I've noticed over the past 10 or 15 years is toy companies tend to be more open to outside innovation, and they're more open to people like me approaching them with ideas and actually pitching ideas to them. There are, lots of pet peeves that a lot of companies have about that. They want to make sure that you've done your homework and make sure that there's nothing out there like it already. But many of these major toy companies these days actually have like a portal for the average Joe with an idea to submit. About 10 years ago, some companies just weren't looking at inventor work. They were not interested in looking at outside innovation. They were like, why do I need outside innovation? They would have a crew, and they would do things in-house. They're kind of like, there's been a lot more of like democratization of innovation. You have to sign an NDA and go through all the motions with them. But people, for the most part, they're interested in seeing what your ideas are. There's an event in Chicago every year. It's called Chi-Tag. It's in November, kind of like in the middle of November. And they invite amateur inventors to this event. And you can do speed pitches. You can showcase your prototypes. And you can actually talk to major toy companies. all the majors are there. And, so you have executives from Mattel, even Lego, who was very kind of closed-minded for many, many years, their reputation for being just, in a vacuum. Even Lego is there to, talk about your ideas with you. And there's NDAs and things like that, and it's all on the up and up. So for anybody who's thinking about getting into inventing, whether it be games or toys or anything in the toy industry, that's where you start, I think, with ShyTag. So next couple of weeks, I'll be going out to LA. We're doing a big inventor sweeps out there where all the major toy companies have set up shop. So that's becoming kind of a new toy fair event that happens every year. So I'll be going out there with a bunch of my samples, a bunch of video, and I'll be having meetings with some of the inventor relations people and pitching ideas to them, and also kind of filling them in on new developments on some older things that I've showed them based on their feedback. But, over the past 20 or so years, the industry came to a consensus that the toy fair is not soon enough. We have to do these deals like in the fall. So like all the majors, the Walmarts, and the Toys R Us at the time, and any major retailer that sells toys, all their deals and all their orders they're all done in the fall. They're all done in September anyway. So we were doing like these, what we used to call pre-toy fair, pre-show, fall previews. And that was in New York for a while. And then over the past few years, it's been more of an LA-centric event. So that's like the big thing right now. That's when all the pitches happen, and that's where all the decisions get made and all the deals get done. And the New York Toy Fair, there's a lot of international stuff there. But there's other shows like Nuremberg. There's a huge one. There's the Hong Kong Toy Fair. I'm not sure if that's such a big one anymore. But Nuremberg in London and in Tokyo are other toy fairs, examples of other toy fairs. And the one in Nuremberg is probably the biggest one in the world. And that's where like everybody from South America, that's just worldwide, everybody goes to that one.
And why is that location the big one?
Nuremberg is a toy city. It's an old toy city.
Oh, okay.
That's where like model trains, all the German stuff, like bubble blowing stuff, toy trains, all that stuff came from Nuremberg.
Oh, okay. So it's more like the German engineering kind of.
Yeah, it's a toy culture.
Would you say the toy industry is more analog tech versus like high tech, or?
Well, it's both. It's both. There are things that you see LCD screens in a lot more things these days. A lot of them are just interactive screen activated stuff, video games. We still recognize the value of having something tactile and something in real life right in front of you that's actually doing its thing, as opposed to seeing a little screen with an animated thing, like a Tamagotchi, whatever the equivalent of it is these days. But those are generally, they're two different categories. There's interactive electronics that you see like in a specific aisle in Walmarts or whatever. And then there's your traditional stuff. And that traditional stuff it doesn't go away.
Over the years, what have you seen change over the years for the technology and the toys and how they build them?
Not a whole lot. I mean, there's different ways of designing and different ways of prototyping. People use AI for ideation. People are using 3D printers for doing prototypes, CNC, CAD for design. Those are huge things that happened over the course of my career. Whereas in the beginning, people were still doing drawings, traditional drawings, and sculpting by hand, sculpting out of wax and doing urethane castings and making tooling that way. So there's been a lot of streamlining in the design aspect of it. But as far as manufacturing goes, not so much. Chips and LEDs and all the electronic things like that have come a long way. But that's really probably the only real major changes that I've seen
And is there any of your inventions that are applicable outside the toy industry? Are you using any of your inventions for other applications?
I've been trying to break out of this industry for the past 30 years, and they keep pulling me back in. But yes, I have a projection technology that I've pitched to pinball companies. I have pitched the same mechanism to like marketing companies for point of purchase displays for doing animated projections. That's something that, those two industries are not used to working that way, like, licensing innovation from the outside. It's just not set up that way.
We talk a little bit about the optical and
Yeah, so that impulse projection technology that was born of my trying to get away from the toy industry and get into doing lighting. I had like an industrial design background. I always wanted to do lighting design. I just thought that was a cool thing, designing like light fixtures and lighting effects. I came up with this impulse projection idea because I thought it would make a really good animated nightlight. I had friends that were kind of, offshoots of the toy industry. They were working for companies that had Disney licenses for manufacturing other things outside of toys, like nightlights. So I said, well, this would be a really cool animated nightlight. And so you can do all these different SKUs, you can do all these different characters. All you have to do is replace this slide and just have a different colored case, and just that's it. I still have to this day not done a Disney lighting license, but some old colleagues of mine were like, why can't you put that in an action figure? And I was like, because I don't want to. I just wanted to get into lighting. But yeah, an old colleague of mine dragged me in and said, look, you got to put this I have this thing, I have the application for it, let's just do it. So that's how that happened. And that's where Fishco came in. And using my expertise in the action figure category, I started pitching ideas for action figures to outside companies.
so what was the patent process like when you put this stuff together and you kind of had this idea?
Oh, it's terrible. It's really painful. I'm not sure that I would do that again without help from a licensee.
So, but before you go to them, you do like a provisional patent first, right?
I've never done a provisional patent.
Oh,
I think
right.
if you're gonna go through the effort of doing a patent, in my case, it's just, and there's so many reasons for this. I don't want to bore anybody with legal shtick, but it's better to just, if you're going to write a patent, just go for the full on patent, unless you think there's going to be like many changes on it. Provisional only is good for a year. I've done patents that were in-house when I was working for Toy Biz and for Marvel, and that's they're a lot of work and it's a lot of expense.
Hmm.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you should be prepared for shock, horror, dismay, and rejection from the patent office, because that's like their go-to response is, nah, we've seen stuff like this before, and then you have to respond to say no, and at every turn you're shelling out cash.
And so what's in the future for you guys? I know without giving away any trade secrets here, or what do you think is coming up next? What's the strategy?
I don't have any strategy. I just throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. Um, yeah, I'm still working on, in this business of inventing, timing is everything. Like you could have things that you've shown 10 years ago and you still have it on the shelf. And, you bring it out every once in a while and you show it to people and they're like, maybe the time's not right. Then once in a while, out of the blue, somebody will call you and say, hey, remember that thing that you showed me like years ago? What do you call that thing? That thing that did the thing? Sometimes timing is right for that. So we rely on that on the back catalog as well.
So it always helps to have unfinished works, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in having unfinished work and just raw prototyping, you can also, you're not typecasting your mechanism either. You're just, there are people out there in this industry that you can just show raw things to like that. And they want to partner with you and develop it with their team. And those are that's my dream client, the people like that.
So that's your ideal client. client that
Yes.
wants to take the idea and bring it
Right.
all the way forward with their resources.
Right. And but with my resources as well. There are other major toy companies that you could just hand off your drawings, your assets, your videos, your mechanisms, your samples, and they'll just run with it. And you just, a couple of years later, you'll get like a royalty check or something. But I prefer to do kind of like a team effort thing. And usually the results for that come out way better when you're working with a team.
So are you mostly, do you self-fund, or do you go out and look to raise money for projects and things like that?
I've never gone out to raise money for projects. If I do show a concept that there's interest in and they want to develop it further, we'll do, an option agreement. So an option agreement is basically they give me, I take it off the market. I basically stop showing it to people, to other companies, and they will fund the development. And, in exchange, I take it off the market. We work together. If it becomes an item, if it goes into production, the money that they're paying me for the development gets taken out of the future royalty checks. So, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. They return the samples, I keep the money, and that's the way an option agreement works. A development option. So you have that to work with. So that's the way that I get funding.
Thanks everyone for attending the 5th episode of Entrepreneur Arts. We had our guest today, Troy Fischer, the master of mechanisms and multi-talented artist, engineer, inventor, and entrepreneur. So thanks so much, Troy, for joining us today.
Thanks, Dan.